So here's the agenda. Let's do a little bit on how, us mere mortal SharePoint people understanding the vastness of the dynamic security model, right?
Yeah.
And I'll do that by just giving you my slightly dodgy interpretation, and then you can sort of correct me, and we'll come to a landing there. And I've got a COE related idea I want to test with you anyway, and then we can talk COE more specifically. Does that sound like a plan?
Absolutely up for that.
Okay, so we might screen share some of this at a certain point, just because I don't know if you've seen the SharePoint aspects of this as well. But I reckon probably the one area, if I was to contrast the two different kind of security models, the one thing they have in common is the fact that you can go, I'm going to define a certain combination of permissions. So you have the idea of a security role, and SharePoint has the same thing. And then you can start assigning them to groups and all, then assigning those groups to resources. So there's a little bit of differences, but that part's kind of broadly analogous to each other. And in a second I'll go and find one of my demo tenants so we can pop this up and have a look. But the bit that I reckon SharePoint people totally would not grok immediately, because it took me a while to get my head around it, is the notion of record ownership doesn't have that much bearing in the SharePoint security model.
Does it not? I actually didn't know that.
Because the closest you get is, it tracks it. You've certainly got ownership, like, this is the person that made this kind of level of ownership. But outside of one tick box that sort of turns on some very basic record level security, ultimately, it doesn't really come into it, because literally in SharePoint, here's a list and you pick one item. Just say you want to go record level. You would literally go, okay, so this item, I'm going to give this Active Directory group write access.
Yep.
I'm going to give this SharePoint group, and I'll come, read access, and I'll give this individual user, Active Directory user, I don't know, delete and append access, or something to that effect. So you can, and that's literally the natural way a SharePoint person would think about it. They would go, they don't really distinguish between. Well, for a start, you can just directly link an Active Directory group if you want to, and you can do a SharePoint group as well. But you notice how ownership doesn't really come into there. Sort of whoever sort of created the record doesn't have that much bearing on things. And so in the end, it means that it's easy to understand and sort of grasp, but it has some, I guess, inefficiencies in terms of scale, right? And so when I was reading it, so it took me a while. I read the documentation, but I truly didn't grasp the concept of ownership as a performance improvement sort of mechanism. And so that's kind of worth talking about a little bit for the SharePoint people watching. And so I'll give you my go, and I know it's not going to be as good as yours, but here is sort of how I figured it out.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, go right ahead. I've got a very random analogy for you on this after you tell me. So
okay,
yeah. Cool.
Well, I guess for the SharePoint folks, you can still do it that way I described, except you can't do AD groups. You can definitely say, here's a record, and this group can do this, and this group can do that. You have that level of flexibility should you wish to. But the main kind of, you tell me if I'm wrong, it seems the main direction or the thrust is more often to go, actually, what we'll do is, if I, for example, wanted a team and a group of people to access a certain set of records, I'd actually change the ownership of those records to the team involved.
Yep.
And so it's not so much individual access control lists on the item. It's just simply going, this record is now owned by this team. And ergo, by being a part of that team, and that team has access rights, boom, you're in. That's kind of my sort of crash interpretation. Now, yeah, that's actually a little bit foreign to the world of SharePoint, and so therefore I don't think it's probably appreciated why that's actually a good thing until you start to delve a little bit deeper. But what do you think of my analogy so far? Do you reckon that's sort of half?
So there are some things you can include, but you're bang on the money. So it's always about who basically owns that piece of data or that set of data.
Yeah. And what was your analogy, by the way, before I go to my next little bit?
I don't want to destroy it. So I'll tell you what. You tell me your next bit, and then I'll bring it in, because there are other little elements to this that creates weirdness. Well, you carry on.
Because SharePoint folks are so used to just going, here's an item, apply an access control list to it. Then when you go, oh well, but of course there can only be one owner. of a record, right? And so you get a lot of performance gains. If you actually look at an entity, you can actually see there's an owner record there, right? And so so if you went, this record is now owned by team A, right? And you're a member of team A, that works great. But if you're a member of team A and team B, you can only pick one owner of those records.
That's right.
You know, so it's very powerful in terms of performance. You know, it scales really well because you're not having individual access control lists, you know, on each record. It's a bit like you've just got to look up to an owner field, right? And it just kind of figures things out that way. So that was the bit that kind of, I got all excited and I was thinking, this is the right way to do it. And then I went, wait a second, I have a scenario where I have two facilities and I have parts that can be transferred between facilities. And I have administrators that have the rights to do that, but regular users are just going to be in one group. So I thought I had it all figured out until I went, oh, crap. What do I do in a scenario where someone checks in a new part and I want it to go, Chris, I know that you're in site A because you're a member of a certain team. Therefore, I'll change the ownership of that record to that team. And that was where the fun sort of started to begin for me, because that got me into the world of Power Automate flows to sort of activate that sort of scenario. So
I'm going to change your life today, man.
Cool. So I was, and one of the questions for you actually was going to be around the best way to do those little, okay, the record's been inserted. How do I change the ownership in an efficient way? You know, would you do a classic workflow? Would you use flow? So yeah, that's the sort of question that popped into my head, because the thing about the CDS, there's just so many different options for doing stuff, you know, and
so many. That's the thing, Paul. Like, there is another approach to take with this. So without even thinking about teams, in fact, like team ownership will come there once you figured out the other piece.
Yep. And by the way, I deliberately excluded business units so far. I don't know if that's where you were going, but
that's where I'm going.
And we'll talk to that as well, because I did ponder that. And I really did look at that as well. And I could see the inherent efficiencies of that. But from a SharePoint, I didn't even get to business unit yet, because that's even more foreign to a SharePoint person.
Yeah. It's so getting that down. If you can get
Teams has that semblance of groups, you know, but we'll unpack that a little bit later. So anyway, that's sort of at least part of that little journey that we went on. So. But you were promising an analogy. I was wondering what it was.
It's more around the business units, but the way that I see CDS security working, right, is think of it like a waterfall. Okay. And if you're at the very top of the waterfall, you can see everything. So you can look straight, you can look wide, you can look far, and you can see down, you can see everything, right? You can look up, it's absolutely brilliant. When you're in the middle of the waterfall, you can see straight and down, but you can't look up. Right? When you're at the bottom of the waterfall, you can see straight. Okay. And that's how hierarchical business unit structures work in CDS. So like, you can base your security model on that without even touching a team. So like, I love the fact that you brought up facilities management, because that's actually an area that I struggled with hugely from a security perspective back in the day. Because at the previous company I worked in, it was courier logistics. And then we built a sort of hybrid FM solution in CRM 2011. So when you brought that up, I was like, oh man. So basically that's why I love the business unit structure. So when you're thinking about like different facilities, you can have this concept of like only a user can access their information based on role-based security within the system. So they can only see their little blob. So from a performance perspective, if you and I were using the system and we had role-based security that said you can use and update and create your records and see your records, and I can do mine, that's it.
And super efficient.
Yeah, and it's super good, right? Because you're locked down so much. And I'm always equating it to eating pie, right? So when you're at user level, you're at the bottom of the waterfall, you're only eating your piece of pie, right? And that's actually the diagram in the business unit thing. It's like half quarter pie, half pie. Yeah. So the second layer,
I'll pull it up in a little bit too, or annotate later in the on the video post. I'll chuck it up.
That would be awesome, right? Then the middle one is that if you have the right structure, okay, because we're part of a team. Now, don't think teams as in like the team the team structure in CDS. Think of team as like we're in the sales team or in the sales group, right? Now, what will happen is that I can see your records if we've got the right roles. I can see my records, but I might not be able to write to your records. And this is the granularity of the business unit structure and role-based security, is that it is so particular about what you can do and what you can't do within the business unit structure. And then depending on who you are, you can sometimes see up one layer in the business unit. And then as you move up, you can see the hierarchical nature going down. Now, where it gets interesting. So that business unit structure is like my go-to point when I'm doing anything in the CDS. So I never use team structures until later on, right?
Yep.
So team structures solve. So with security in CDS, you build for the pattern and never the anomaly.
Yep.
And that's the.
Oh, I like that. That's a cool quote. Build for the pattern, never the anomaly. I like that.
Yeah, it's a big problem because I've implemented before. And you get into a thing called security role Armageddon or business unit Armageddon, where people create these huge hierarchies of business units. But dude, it is so unnecessary, right?
Yeah.
And also the security roles. So like what will happen is that you'll build a security role and I'll build a security role called sales manager, right? And what we'll do is we might have like a couple of things that are different, but inherently, the pattern's the same. So what you do is you combine the roles and you get rid of the anomalies and you say, this is our security role. What you do with teams is you solve the anomaly with teams. Right.
Yep.
And that's the interjection on the sides. That's like the poke.
Yep.
So I always say security model in CDS is actually, a lot of people view it as a 2D thing. I view it as like a 3D structure where you can sort of like have that approach, but then just give me a second. But then you can kind of interject with teams, and that's where like with the business unit structure, it's aligned to the security role, which you want to spend as little time changing as possible. But with teams, you can go nuts. You can say,
yeah. Sorry, where you were coming. So I'll tell you two things. I actually looked at the business unit first, and we haven't actually explained that for SharePoint folks yet. So you sort of gave the waterfall analogy. I would actually say it this way. It's literally like a firewall.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool. I like that.
So, because like you can have the one entity with crap loads of data, and if your user is in one business unit, and the security role has been applied at business unit or at the business unit and below level, literally you don't have to worry about it. Like it's the most broadest way to just like divvy up access to records, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I saw it as like a firewall. You can literally just partition stuff off. And it was the Active Directory administrator in me that actually went, oh, I can see this going nuts, right? Because it's like when people go crazy with OUs in AD and just lose a plot. And plus, the other thing, and actually, you tell me if I've got this right. You pick up any entity in CDS, there is a built-in field there that says what business unit, like each record has the business unit, and so that way it doesn't have to do ACLs. It's just like a filter, right?
That's literally all it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's highly efficient. So yeah, look, it's a great construct. Now, here's the interesting thing. A lot of Dynamics people I spoke to, I said, do you use business units? They go, no, I never used them. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? And this scenario of mine, these two facilities, as you say, facilities aren't exactly going anywhere, right? They are physical locations. You change an organizational restructure, facility is a facility. It doesn't matter how the teams are structured. You're either at site A or you're 100 kilometers down the road at site B. So I thought business unit could work quite well in this scenario, and it would be simple and elegant. You just put, you define your business units, you put your users in each business unit, define your security role at business unit level. Quite an elegant, easy scenario. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yeah. And I like that because facilities actually does represent quite a complex hierarchy of assets and things. Like actually. Honestly, the first app I built I built it this morning on Oakdale, was facilities management because I wanted to see if I could build the hierarchy.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a fair point.
Cool. Well, okay. So now this is where the Teams thing came in. I thought very simple, highly efficient, and a really nice way, because a SharePoint person would literally, the way they would solve the problem is they'd go, we'll make a site collection for facility A, and then we'll provision an identical site collection for facility B. So it's like having separate database instances, or like making a separate environment for site A and site B. And so Office people could actually, if they don't know the model, could very easily think, oh, that's how we should do it. We'll go make a prod environment for facility A, one for facility B. But of course, if you're building a whole bunch of entities and forms and going to the trouble of creating views, you don't want to have to do that on both environments or or multiple entities. So the idea of using a business unit and going, apply that hierarchy over the top, and literally by magic, you've already partitioned off that between the things is fantastic, right? So that was one of the questions. I was like, why are people reluctant to use business units? Why do you think there's kind of a lot of people I spoke to were like, oh yeah, I know business units. And I'm like, have you used them? And they go, nah, never have. So I was curious whether that was a common thing, or You know, people just either misunderstand them or had bad experiences with them, or what?
Yeah, okay, so in my opinion, right, because I think security can get very icky very quickly. Okay.
Yep.
I think business units are the right way to control the security patterns in an organization. I definitely think that, without looking at different environments, yeah, there will be scenarios where there will be a need for different environments. I mean, also based on things like data residency and blah, blah, blah. But so I'm going to narrow it down to singular environments. Okay.
Yep.
I think that business units are a huge necessary, and they're not an evil. They're actually brilliant. When you figure out how the data moves, that's why a lot of people struggle with them, I think, is because it's quite hard to work out sort of where a record is in the hierarchy. So what I found works pretty well, right, is I draw the hierarchy. I've dealt with hugely complex business unit hierarchies, and honestly still pull, like in financial services companies. And that's really where it gets deep, 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 because you want to create those sort of invisible walls between departments. So that's where it works really, really well. In FM, I can see it working really well. But what I do is I actually draw the structure. So I make sure I understand the structure and why it sits the way it does, physically draw it. And then there's a trick that I have, and it, like I said, it works for me. So I play the record ownership game, right? So you pick a couple of core users. So maybe you and me, right? Maybe you're the sales manager, or you're the sales manager and I'm the salesperson, right? Let's use FM. You're the internal facilities manager and I'm a mere cleaner or something, right?
Yep.
When I get access to that record, not ownership, access.
Yes.
Where do I sit, right? And where am I accessing it from? So at like an FM level, at a manager level, you might be managing 15 buildings, yeah, and those 15 buildings are what you do. At a lower level, I might be somebody that's like working as a site manager or a very basic building manager. I'll only have access to that one record. Controlling that in a team is way harder than controlling it in a business unit.
Yes.
Because remember, a business unit, I just fling the role and create the unit, assign the person, and I'm done.
Yep. And actually, it's also important. What you said something I think is important to also note. Business unit has bugger all to do with ownership. That's a different concept. This is just a way to firewall your data in a single environment with a single set of entities. So in effect, Group A or Unit A can use the same entities, forms, flows, everything as Unit B, but you don't have to worry about partitioning. In some ways, it's almost like an instance in a way.
It's literally it.
Yeah.
So you're on the money, and that's where a lot of people struggle with this. So when we talk about security, we're talking about like CDS security, but when you break it, when you move it up a layer, you've got this whole concept of environments, environment strategy. Where should things live? Why should they live there? And then once you break it down even further, I've worked with organizations that think that they need a multi-environment tenant because of the security model, and I'm like, guys. You can literally control all of this in business units. The problem is you have to understand the underlying data in order to apply the business units, and that's where it goes to our previous conversation around entity
structure. We're back to the bottom up versus top down, right? Now, so let me give you the little curveball in this one that made me go, okay, I'm going to try the team's approach, because there's two levels to ownership. We've got to come back to that. So we talked about business unit, cool. Now you come back to this team and this ownership thing. There is, with this particular group of staff, I'm now actually messing with the use case just to suit my hypothetical argument. This is not actual thing. But let's just say the contractors who work in these facilities, 1 week are there at facility A and the next week they're at facility B. So 80% of the workforce actually are transferring between them at different times, right? There's an element of truth to this. Now, the issue there is you would have to then move users out of one business unit into the other business unit on a regular basis. And that's one way you can govern it. Like, you can totally do that. And you could automate that easily enough too. So that's one thing. But and we should also, I'll preamble this by saying, teams and business units together actually is a perfectly valid combo for the scenario I'm starting to describe actually, right? So if you imagine the scenario where you go, okay, actually, that happens a lot, a huge amount of workforce are moving, and therefore it's not as static as you wish, users don't slot neatly into a business unit. So then I was like, okay, let's play with that scenario for a bit. So if I put people into a team, right, and there's a bit to this that a lot of Dynamics people probably aren't aware of, but let's say this is just a regular team, like an ownership team. We put our users in, And then I'm back to this thing where I can go, actually, you can be in team A and team B, right? I can actually put you in both, right? But when I write the data, so long as I know which team you're in at a particular point, I set the ownership appropriately. Does that make sense?
It does, but dude, have you heard of access teams?
I've heard of it and never explored it. I'd love for you to tell me that.
That's what you need to do in the scenario. What you call ownership is one thing. Access to temporary records is different. So you know where I see this a lot. Access teams are used in like bid management. So a good example is you've got an RFP team, and I did this in South Africa actually. Before access teams, we had the exact same approach, and we had to move people. So you've got an RFP, and this company do water treatment plant implementations, right? So they were responding to the RFP. This is like a year-long thing, hey? And you might have multiple people responding to the RFP. So like a core team will own each RFP, but then you have an access team that allows people temporary access to those records.
Yeah, gotcha.
And that I'll send you the link, man. It's absolutely awesome. But the actual doc site says, with owner teams or access teams, you can easily create and share business objects and collaborate with users across business units in the common data service. Then if you drill down, an access team doesn't own records and doesn't have security roles assigned to the team. The team members have then privileges defined by their individual security roles for teams in which they are members. So you can shift people out of access teams.
So let's unpack that slightly. Let me just quickly open the door because I've got a cat that's whining to trying to get out, and I don't know if it's picking up in the camera. So let me just, it's annoying the hell out of me. Hang on.
Oh, cool.
Go on, out of here. There, done. Sorry. Bloody cat can't make up its mind. Once in, then it wants out. You know the story. Okay. So the one thing I understood with access teams, you couldn't assign a security role. And so my poor Office SharePoint brain went, okay, I've just figured out the whole ownership model and I actually get what's going on there. So this access team is a whole new thing. So let's break that down a little bit and tell me practically how that works. So if I, as you said, you need temporary access to certain records. What does it actually look like? Can you just sort of describe that conceptually, or do you have to kind of draw it out or do a scenario?
I'm going to try my best. Okay, so think of it as an indirect connection to a user. Okay, so the way that I best explain it is imagine a grid on the form and you have a list of users, internal users associated to that record. The access team means they can see those records. So because of it's actually a glorified many-to-many relationship, if I'm honest, except there's a thing in the middle that defines how it works, right? So if I want to add you to the access team, you can programmatically do that. I actually can't remember how to do that though. I'll look it up while we're talking now though. But basically the use case is when the number of people for the team isn't necessarily defined, right? So as an example, I don't know how many people are going to be working on this facility at any point. You can create an access team called Building B, and then you can programmatically add and remove people to that specific building depending on the criteria that you have, right? And you can, so basically you can dynamically create the team and dissolve the team as and when. And that's the best thing about it, because you can't do that with an owner team. Like if an owner team, because of the referential integrity, you can't just ditch an ownership team, because then you create orphan records, right?
Yeah, of course. So, so the bit that I'm missing, so everything you described makes sense in terms of then access to a given record or series of records. That's the bit I'm missing in that model, because you said that A, you can't own, B, you can't be assigned a security role. Does that mean it's effectively like the row level security, which we haven't gotten to yet? How does that bit work to the resource?
So it's effectively your role, right? So as an example, if you're assigned to the record and you don't have write access to buildings, but you have read access, you're good, right? So that means that you can see the record, you can interact with the record, you can do whatever you'd like, but you can't write to the record, okay? Like assign and assign to, right? So you can't append records and append to. And that's locked down in the role structure. So as long as remember, it goes back to the entity structure. So I'm like remembering as I'm doing this, as I'm talking.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it goes back to the role structure that you have in your core roles. And remember, it always picks the best, not the worst, right? So if you've been assigned like 10 roles and all of those roles at some point say that you can't write to the building entity, you'll be able to read that thing. Okay. You won't be able to write it. But if you want to create a record like an inspection, you can append it to that record as long as you've got append to privileges. So it takes your personal roles into account. What's going to get screwy is now, this is where it gets really sticky. And I haven't run into this yet, but I've always wondered, if you're part of an ownership team, so say like team B own that record, right? So team B own building B, and the role for that building B is like, you can't write to building B, but then you get you get then added to an access team that is then access to building B, and your role is you can write to building B. Does which one will take it? It's always the best as far as I know. But that's like, I actually think that's probably an experiment I could do here, is try and practically understand which role will take effect.
Okay, well, no, that I will definitely explore that. Thank you for that. That's the one piece of conceptual baggage in the whole security model that I hadn't really gone into. But I also want to go the next level down, because again, if I sort of recap, business units are the most efficient way to do it, because you can create hierarchical structures. You put a user in a business unit, and so long as the role says my business unit or my business unit and below, it very neatly partitions off records, and so you can literally do security without access control lists. The next level in terms of efficiency is being able to go, well, if we can't do that, we can put you into a team. So Chris can be in team A, and so long as team A owns these records, you can then have the per user or per the per user role, the little pie.
The little piece of pie. So
the little piece of pie in the thing. And so that has the advantage of, it's not as good as a business unit thing, but a user can be in more than one team. And so therefore it does give it a degree of flexibility in terms of accessing things, but not necessarily in terms of creating new records. You'd have to have logic to go, which team, in which context or which team am I in at this point in time when I'm creating ownership, right?
Yeah.
Then you got the next level down again. And where this is literally how SharePoint works. And this is a bit where, of course, all the warnings and caveats are. It is possible to still go, I've got a record, and I am now going to grant this user this access and this team this access, and do it just like a SharePoint access control list, right? You can do that sort of security. And that's literally how a SharePoint person would start. That's what they're looking for. But actually, I find, probably deliberately, it's actually quite hard to find, and it's not obvious to do because of the performance implications. And even in Flow, you have to, in Flow, you got to go literally unbound action, and go and find the grant access thing, and it's almost like API level. And maybe they'll never have a one like that. Now, I did read, there was a really interesting document I read. It was a really old one, and it describes exactly the mechanics of how that works and all the little hidden entities for mapping security principles, what teams you're in and all that. And then that maps to the various goods of, records. And I thought, that's pretty damn crazy. And I can understand why there's caveats with it, but it doesn't mean
that part. Like, I avoid that.
So this is the thing, you see, SharePoint people, I reckon they would be looking for that, because that's what they do now. But SharePoint people probably, if you have done row level security with SharePoint, you would know that there's a 50,000 hard limit on the size of lists when you're doing row level security, because obviously applying access control rules to anything bigger than that is kind of crazy. And that's a hard problem no matter what the system is. So I suppose in the CDS world, it's like, well, you can do it, but you've got these other options. You can go the team ownership way. And I've missed one. You can do team ACLs or then user ACLs. That's kind of how, if I'm using Office terminology. But then you go, but if you move up the hierarchy, can you do it with ownership? And then or can you do it with business units? Team ownership. That's kind of how I process things. So I guess if I was going to draw a conclusion on that, it would be the CDS security model. SharePoint people need to not think about it the way they approach SharePoint access control lists. They can't just go in and go, hey, break inheritance, add this group, do this. You've got to actually stop and go, no, could I do this with business units? And the business unit, if things don't change too much in terms of you don't have to flip users from one business unit to another. So therefore, if you have, country. Let's stick to one environment. So it makes sense why they call it business unit, even though a lot of the time you don't do it based on your org structure because that changes all the time, whereas a physical facility doesn't, right?
That's a common mistake that we see, though, is a lot of people think that the business unit structure inside CDS needs to match your org, and it doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, look, in the SharePoint world, people made that mistake with site and site collection structure, thinking it should map the departmental structures, when if you do a task-based or outcome-based information structure, that survives organizational restructures. Because irrespective of, where the IT lives under finance right now, you still got to do a leave form, and so, that's kind of how you get around that. So, no, definitely a similar issue. Now, I'm going to tell you my batshit crazy idea, because there's another, here's my other little variable in here.
Okay.
Here's one thing Teams gives you. Because of Power Platform and Oakdale and CDS and some of the enabling infrastructure, you can now in CDS create two new type of teams, the Active Directory group integrated team or the Office 365 group integrated team.
That's it.
Now, I just used the latter today, right? And I'm going to give you a crazy scenario that I reckon is feasible, but I don't think you're going to like it. So I have a client who, for COE, we now have an entity that has every single Office 365 group that has been made across the enterprise sitting in a entity in CDS. Wow. The intent is it's going to be surfaced in COE, just like apps and flows,
so you just
and all the other things, right?
Yeah, got it.
Now, given that each Office 365 group in Active Directory has owners and members, how Teams, now I'm talking Microsoft Teams, you have owners and members. It turns out the integration between CDS, you can go, I'm going to make a team. It links to this Office 365 group, but I only want the owners in that Office 365 group to be synced across into CDS teams, right? So here's my scenario. Just imagine if I've got an entity with, say, 5,000 Microsoft Teams in it, based on or Office 365 groups. And in COE, I would like anyone who is an administrator of that Microsoft team to put in every 6 months business justification, update their compliance and various other things. And I want to write that same administrative data to that same entity in CDS. So now I've got, every new team has fields for business justification, intention, use, admin type controls. So it's not just pulling API data about how many people are in it and its name and its email address and stuff. Now, the people who I want, let's say now I've got a Canvas app where people literally, they go in the Microsoft Teams experience, they click this app, it pops up all of the teams that they own, and they go in and put their business justification, they submit, and it writes it.
Yep, that sounds good.
And it writes it back to CDS. So here's my batshit crazy idea. Given that every one of those Microsoft Teams has a set of owners, if I was to create a team in CDS, right, and map it to that 365 team and just the owners, I've now got a CDS team that represents everyone who has admin access to that Microsoft team. If I then set in my Teams entity, in the entity with the 5,000 teams, if every individual team's owner was their equivalent CDS team, right? Suddenly, if you work your way back out, I'm now an administrator of my Microsoft team, and Chris, you've just joined the Power Platform admin team that we use to manage everything with Power Platform. We've got discussions, we've got files, I've got a Power BI. You've just joined, so I add you to the owners group of that team. Immediately, now you can pretty much write back administrative information about this group, its justification, why it's there, and you automatically has access to the entity level. So literally there is no management of users. You don't even have to put users in Teams. It's literally just managed for you by the Active Directory or 365 groups integration. So I said this to a friend of mine who's in Microsoft. I said, how do you feel about 5,500 teams in the Teams entity for environment, was my leading question. Because on the Office world, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool because there's no double handling. Literally the person who has the access has that. And this Teams entity is only updated once a day. COE basically scrapes all the latest teams from the Active Directory. What do you got for me? Writes the entry. So that was, I thought I'll test that one on you. What if, that would be a crazy idea that would be totally foreign to a Dynamics person. But in terms of COE type scenario where we're using CDS to store enterprise governance data about what's going on in your tenant, to have the owners of that team natively be able to update administrative information into that entity direct via a Canvas app with no other work was kind of attractive to me.
I've always, so one of the biggest questions we've had in Dynamics is that, you go to an organization and in IT, and the first thing they want to do is control all the security, authentication and groups directly out of the IT department.
Of course.
And then let the business handle the roles, because that's what the business should be doing. And historically, we've never had a great way of doing that. With the new group integration, if I'm honest, man, I've tried some of the groups integration with the team stuff, the AAD security groups and everything, and it's been okay, but like I haven't gotten it to work completely 100% inside CDS. So like I need to probably spend a bit more time doing that. I mean, I recently set up 23 environments with, and that's what I was doing while I missed our call last week, and managed to use the security groups for that. But if you got that to work, I genuinely think you'd be onto something. In fact, you would have something huge.
Well, no, it works. So what there's a reason this is recent. This is today, right? So, the test I did was I basically created a CDS team and I synced it to a particular 365 group, and all I did was give it just pretty much access to an entity, just one test entity.
Yeah.
And then I got someone to basically sign in. I gave them ownership at the team level.
Okay.
And they were immediately within, 20 seconds, their account was a member of the team entity. Like that particular team, they were in there. Their account was directly mapped in the many-to-many inside the CDS level.
Wow.
So I thought, interesting, that's cool. And I like the idea that it's not just everyone, like owners, members. It was literally when you do that Office 365 group, you can literally say in this particular CDS group. And that's the bit that got me kind of interested. And then I actually did the opposite. I then went, okay, I've just now taken this person out of the owners group and made them a lowly member again at Microsoft Teams. And about, again, half a minute later, I go and have a look, and that association is now gone in the CDS team. So yeah, I think that has a lot of potential. Now, I also know this: if you go to a model-driven app right now and you go, I'm going to share the app because the sharing experience is modeled on the Canvas sharing experience.
No, it is.
And if you said, I'm going to share right now, and you can pick any Active Directory group in your domain, it immediately provisions a CDS group and does that linkage for you. That's just the base, how it does it now. So that plumbing is kind of already there. And then that's how Oakdale would surely work, because if you go to Teams experience and you said, I'm going to do some Oakdale stuff, by the way, I haven't used it yet, but I'm going to do some Oakdale, and it provisions a CDS environment, I assume the default team in there is basically going to be an AAD team back to that same Office 365 group that underpins the Microsoft team. So I think
is that in Oakdale, I don't have direct.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, but I bet you behind the scenes, the default team in the default BU would be synced to the 365 one, so you can, and it would just be members and owners, so that everyone gets in.
Do you want to see something interesting? Okay,
yeah, sure.
So I recorded it. I started doing a video recording. Okay, I'm gonna share.
Yep.
Check this out. This is why I think exactly what you're saying is on the money, right? So eventually, when my screen share works, I just yeah, you got that right?
Yep.
Should be coming through. Okay. So this is Oakdale. Yeah, it's embedded in Teams, right? So all I did was all I've done is I've got a Teams browser open. All I've done is open up the Power Apps Studio, so you can build apps and all that jazz and blah blah blah, right?
Yep.
So I was like, okay, this is interesting. I want to see what's more under the hood. So I managed to get through to this sort of admin layer, which is pretty cool. So on your home screen, that's what it looks like. It wasn't immediately. When I did, how does this fit together? Let's get back there. Okay, you got your various apps and do different tables and things, but check this out, dude. Click the See All button, and you get into this list over here. I'm going to go to my tables, my Oakdale tables.
Yep.
All right. Let's pick assets. So I told you I was building an FM. I was looking at building like an FM process.
Yep.
Right? So let's stick to asset because asset's quite a basic one. So I've got a whole bunch of columns that have been added. Look at this. There are columns owning team and owning user.
Yeah. Now, actually, this. Sorry, this is just coming back to our last point. Now that we've got the screen share up, you know, I was talking about this earlier, and it was all conceptual for people listening. So it's actually, exactly that: owning business unit, owning team, owning user, then linked to owner there.
That's it's moving back to your point.
Yeah, like once you actually understand all of that makes sense. Whereas most people doing CDS are like, what the hell is all this extra stuff? I don't know what this is. Sorry, go on. I just thought.
No, you're the money. But you see, that implies now that if that's there, okay, the model behind it is the exact same model as the one available in full CDS, which means that you can then start rigging that up back to those core teams that are generated, which then means that you can fire it up back into AAD. And that's, I know this is a roundabout way of explaining it, but I was worried when before this was going to be released, man. I was like, how are they going to do ownership? Because that was on my, I don't know why, it's a super nerdy thing to think about, but that was on my brain. And then it's just because when I saw that, I was like, okay, this implies exactly what you were saying is going to be feasible. It's just that when I went into the admin UI, I want to see this one here. There we are. So we need to see the.
So it's not listed here.
I didn't see it. I could have been. I briefly looked. Maybe it's there now. No.
Yeah, I would have actually expected it to have been there, to be honest, from an admin point of view. But I bet your COE would pick it up. So in terms of enumerating.
Wait, no, here it is.
Okay, let's go in there. Jump in there, and then go to the. Let's have a look at Teams. And look at the default team.
Neither Paul or I have actually seen any of this.
Yeah. So yeah, let's jump into, let's go your settings, and this is for me. I'd go right now. I'd go settings normally.
Yeah. No, there should be that back end.
Only certain. It's fair. Okay. There you go. So you see what they've done is they've hidden everything. But what does Microsoft Teams integration say? Because users is fine. I mean, we get that. Oh,
look at that.
Okay.
Okay. So now
you're just going to click it anyway because you're like, what the hell?
I just want to do it. I just want to see what happens.
You know what I'm going to do now? Like, so click, I'm going to try and like just get to the URL anyway and see what happens. You know, put instead of /users, you put teams or whatever the Teams equivalent.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Because like, can you get if you go to what teams you're a member of? You know, like you can do that from within the user entity, can you? I think it's in the default form. Again, they might have changed it.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to try and get into the D365 Admin Ui because there's that legacy UI. Try and get into there at some point and see. I don't actually know.
I hear you.
Let me see if I can find. So, what is the name of that org?
Yeah, how are you going to find the URL? Was that's in the see all normally on the previous screen?
Yeah. Or else I can just say, oh, you see, look at that, dude. So here, it's been given there's no org ID. Let's see, maybe it's in here. Come on.
If it was going to be somewhere, it would be the see all in here, right? Yeah, I know exactly where you're looking. This is where I go to look too. It's hidden. What's that one say? It's hidden.
Dude, but look at the structure, right? So if you pick another, oopsie. So this is the old dynamic settings, because what I was thinking was we could probably get into this admin.
Yep, totally here.
It doesn't have one of those. Because look at the
again, probably COE or PowerShell would probably give that to you potentially, but that's all right. That's probably out of scope for what we're doing. But that's really interesting because I suggest actually that AAD integrated team style, like if you go to maybe actually for the benefit of those, if you go to a regular environment, you got one we can put up.
I've got one we can pull apart. Yeah. So let's go to.
Because I noticed when I actually built a Teams integrated one, the new unified experience doesn't quite work. I had to go to legacy to do it properly, but I'll sort of, that's it. If you jump into
so that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. But let's go through this way that everyone would normally go, and I'll show you one thing that I have. And the users, jump into your Teams and.
Do you want to go to Teams or users?
Yeah, just go to Teams for 1 second. We'll just go to the default team because what I wanted to show.
Dude, by the way, I forgot to tell you, when you create a business unit, it also creates a team, an associated team.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that makes sense. Because I figured there's always a default team for a business unit, right?
There is.
Okay, so if you go Teams, this is what was a bit weird. And so again, I'm thinking maybe some Dynamics people aren't aware of this because this was never really a Dynamics thing. I think it was very much Power Platform inspired because of the native Canvas sharing experience is so AD driven, you know, it had to be made smoother. So if you go to make a new team, actually change the view, instead of local business owner team.
Yeah, let's pick all of them.
AAD office group team.
Which one? That one there?
That one. Now go new. Now I'll tell you straight up, this actually won't work in this one. You have to go native to do it. There's a slight difference, but that's okay. That'll get fixed. Yeah. But the bit that I was explaining for folks, just so they're aware, is you come into here and you can see you put in your team name and just go down to team type and change it from an owner team, because I remember that's where I saw access team at the start. I was like, what's access? And then you go AAD office group. And then you just go to AD and you put in your Microsoft team Azure ID thing.
So you're doing...
Yeah, exactly.
So I've actually done this before a couple of times, but not.
And oh, by the way, here's a new thing that you can do. This has just come out recently. You can assign that team a sysadmin role. So you can now actually create a scenario where you can have an Office 365 or a Microsoft team with all your admins in it. So you can discuss things, have posts. You got that memory snapshot of administration. You can then create a team like we're doing, grant it sysadmin. And so therefore, again, you're managing the administration in the one place, right? So you're not doubling up access everywhere.
This is cool. So actually, because I did this with security groups, right? So what I'd done previously was that in the 23 environments that are set up, I basically created a AAD security team and then assigned that security group to the environment as the core. And then I was just adding users to the security group because I wasn't sure who was going to be actual users. And then it obviously created the user, which is cool. It just didn't assign the role. And now that's where I'm interested, is the team.
Well, this is the thing. If you take that security group idea one step further, right? Because an Office 365 group is still an Active Directory group, it's just got slightly different characteristics, or it is different. But anyway, it has members. But what it has is it has the conversations, right? It has the chat history. It has a lot of that collaboration stuff. So suddenly, imagine as an administrator, you're added to this team. By definition, you now have the access you need, but you've got that snapshot of the whole history of administration. So you come in new, you can go back and look at the last 3 months of chats between admins and get a whole lot of context around an environment that you wouldn't have had before. So I like the knowledge management aspect to using Teams in this way. So that's why I was super stoked when Office Group was specifically an integration option within this, you see. So, but yeah, what you'll find though, so you put in the Azure AD Office, you go and find your group out of AD, you pop it in. But what if I don't do it using the classic interface, there's a couple of fields that don't get exposed through here. So I think it was originally designed to be scripted, as part of Oakdale when you provision one. But anyway, like it definitely works. It gets set up. But yeah, so you can also give it sysadmin, which is cool, because imagine lots and lots of environments, and each environment could provision a team linked to the same AAD group, which is your Power Platform administrators, which then pretty much make the management of environments a lot simpler.
You see, that's what I actually now I'm thinking that with the energy hack stuff that I've done. So check this out. I'll show you what I mean. I think security groups work, but I'm wondering if I should have gone this route. Yeah, security, and it's like, ooh, wow. Security is a deep dark hole, but it's fun. Okay, so let's see if it'll let me in. Ooh, which one did I select? Did I select 001? I hope I did. I do this all the time. Did I? I did, yeah. No, just skip that. Blindly, don't even read it. Just pray to God that TFA doesn't make a difference. Okay, so check it out, right? If I go to here and I just smash on groups over here.
Yep.
This was fun, man, because I've never gotten to set up a multi-environment tenant before. So there we go. I just created a bunch of security groups.
Yep.
Yeah. And this worked well, really well.
And it's probably fair to say that most enterprises, particularly cybersecurity infrastructure functions, they want Active Directory to be the authoritative source for all groups, right? And that actually makes sense when you consider there's just so many places. So the idea of being able to create teams that are intrinsically linked to a AD group or a 365 group. And as I say, Chris, the difference with the 365 group, I mean, there's probably lots, but the fact that you can go that one step further and go just the owners, exclude the members, thanks, makes it interesting. Because from Microsoft Teams' point of view, let's again go back to the idea of having a Power Platform admins team.
Yeah.
The owners are the people that actually truly administer stuff. The members could be a manager, could be a friendly person from the enterprise architect team. Yeah, so you don't want them administering stuff, but you want them to be able to contribute to conversations. So yeah, you can.
If I create that O365 AD team, do I run it through this whole process like you do with the security teams over here?
No. So what how are you doing it here? Oh, you're doing it through Azure. So just think, this is literally if you went make a Microsoft team right now, you make some random team called blah.
Yeah.
Then we can go to portal.azure.com and go find the ID for blah. Like, we'll try it now. Let's just do it live.
So do you want to do it through Office?
No, so go to Teams. Go make yourself a new team. You cool doing that on this tenant?
Yeah, man. I don't mind.
Okay. Just go and go to Teams and make some random team for yourself, and we'll call it, I don't know, Good Stuff Demo or whatever you want to call it, Metal.
Oh man, this thing's uber slow. There are 50 users working on this right now. So whatever happens.
Oh yeah, that's right. we're only slightly meddling with forces.
Yeah, it's okay. I did, man. I did my recording earlier and I actually ditched it. My first ever experience with Project Oakdale. Then I'm like, I better redo this.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to having a crack at it, but I've just been way too busy building model-driven apps and figuring out security models.
Yeah, man. Look, honestly, I think once you're already super good with the security piece anyway. So like, I don't think you're going to struggle. The Oakdale stuff for me is just, it feels really, really awesome to build out an app and just connect up to the table so quickly. Wow.
I suspect you're a bit like when SharePoint people look at lists, they start to poke around the back end and go, how did they do that? And I'm sure you're like Oakdale going, oh yeah, if I want to, I'll see if I can get to the back end of it.
Exactly it.
So yeah, if you just go down and go create a team down the bottom.
Cool. And let's go.
And call it, do a create. Do it from scratch.
Yep.
For simplicity.
Public.
Private. Make it private.
Whoops. Yeah.
Because this would be an admin. Like, let's assume this is like our group of administrators. Oh, I like it.
Yeah, there we go. Cool. Okay.
All right, cool. So now, and you're the owner, so that's cool.
Yes.
So that'll do a sync. Now go to portal. Go back to your Azure tab there, and go to AAD. Oh, groups will probably do it. I don't know. I normally go to Azure AD. That's it. And then go down to the groups in the list there. Now go and search for rock and roll. We should have an ID there already. There it is there. So grab that object ID there.
I did that. Like, that is new to me. I didn't actually know it created a group. Okay.
Yeah, no, it does. It's not a secure. Active Directory's intention in the future is just everything's a group and there's just different characteristics. One be security, office, but that'll take a while. But if you grab that object ID and clipboard it.
Gotcha.
Okay, can you now go to the classic Dynamics view? Go back to your sort of power. Go pick an environment where you want to add a team to, but we want to add the team via the classic way.
Dude,
because this is the only way I could do it. Now this is now your world. Sometimes it takes me a while to find my way to the screen that I need because they're trying to direct you to this new experience.
Oh yeah, you can. Let's see if we look in here. No, come on, close. I have got a couple of ways of getting there.
Yeah.
But normally it's just.
So go to Teams. You want to go Teams.
Sorry, I just had.
But you want to get to that. You want to get to that Dynamics view where you click Teams from the legacy one. So yeah,
should say go to Microsoft Dynamics 365 at the top.
Cool.
It doesn't work well.
Let's see how we go.
We'll just do that.
I just kind of click around until I eventually get there. It's pretty amateur hour when I'm trying to do that. The manage users. Okay, I don't think Teams has that link, so I probably should have gone via users.
You should be able to just ditch the URL. There you go.
Here we go. Yeah. All right. Now go.
It's loading up it's loading up in the legacy anyway.
Cool. So go in. I hope this will work. So go in new. Yeah. Do your view back to AAD. Yep.
No weirdness going on. Okay,
You'll
cool.
tell it'll have a couple more fields if it's a right one, but we'll do this anyway. If it whinges, it whinges.
Yeah. I really hope somebody's not demoing now.
Oh, hang on. This has gone off to your model app. Yeah, this is.
Don't worry. It does it every now and then. Just hit advanced settings and you'll get to the new tab.
Oh, okay.
Dude, so the best way to get in is just open up a model app and hit advanced settings.
Okay, cool.
It just decides to do weird things sometimes.
Yep.
Okay, so
yeah, this is what we're looking for. Yes. And then off to security in it.
Yep.
Or is
no? I clicked admin. Sorry, security, and then teams.
Yeah, it goes. All right, now. So from here, if you go, whoops, just shut my phone up.
That's good. Yeah.
So now have you? Yeah, that's cool. And then go do your team type before you go too far. And this is the bit that I like. So if you go AD Office Group, put in your object ID, but where it says membership type, click it.
Now I didn't know you could do that.
This is the bit that I was like, oh, the world opened up for me when I saw this, right? So if you change that to owners.
Dude, that is freaking awesome. I didn't know you could do that.
Now, some of the bits that get you is like, so go whack in an administrator and,
Okay, wait, in AAD?
No. Just is that there's a required field there, administrator. I assume that's just like, is that the equivalent sort of a?
That's just like the mammal managing the team. So
yeah.
Cool.
All right, save that and close that. That should work.
Okay, should we leave it open and then add people as owners into the team and then come back?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, but they have to access. No, here's the one thing: they have to access the environment. So, what you'd have to do is add one of your demo users, then open an incognito as that demo user, access the environment, and then you'd go and see it in there.
Right. So let's go. Let's be.
But actually, instead of doing it that way, don't do it this way, Chris. Go back to teams. Like this is how it would literally be. So you go in your rock and roll teams. Typically, you come into skip that. Let's actually let's assume it's done. Right, we're in here, and now you're like, yeah, we know how that works. So you come in, go your manage team.
Manage team, then add owners.
Yeah, because then you see you got owners there. Yeah, so you can start to that's searching existing. Go wipe it out and go add member over on the button blue on the right. Yep. Then you get to choose owner or whatever. So yeah, there you go. So
random one. Let's pick
user 44. So we'll add him and then we'll make him owner.
Add owner.
Okay, so my test today. I tested this with 2 different people. I then, as soon as I did that, I got them to sign in to go to find that environment, and they were then able to successfully. It added them to the team for me.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go new incognito. So we'll go command. Sweet. Oh wow, what have I done there?
I wasn't sure if that was some just weird UK keyboard thing. I kept quiet.
It is actually. Bugger off. God, this thing can be a little slow. Okay, so we'll skip. All right, so get away.
So now if you go off to Power Platform World, hopefully that environment will be there. I'm hoping so anyway.
Oh man. Okay, it's just
and it may well be that, who knows, maybe you need to be a base, you need that minimum config or common data services user. I'm not sure, but
yeah, it's cool. We're going to try it anyway.
So long as the environment's accessible to you, that will then add you in. So what was the environment you did that to? Was it that one there?
No, it was team 10.
Team 10. Okay. So
but check it out, Paul. Sometimes it takes a while to show up in this list.
Yeah.
This will be the test.
I've seen that before. I think in my example, the base user already had like pleb user access to the environment, like it was
It's not there, but that's fine because, I mean, it might not happen straight away. I mean, there's a good chance that this might actually happen, 10 minutes from now. I mean, I don't know, because remember, this thing is chewing up. I mean, this thing is actually, it's been crunched quite badly by.
Oh yeah. Well, you're in there, so it's picked up you as the owner, I assume. And now I don't know if that just did that auto magically since, but you're already the owner of the team. So.
Well, let's check here. Okay, so it's added user 44 there. So because there's a few steps, right? So maybe what needs to happen is that. So that's there. That's in Azure. Next one will be to see if it syncs back up.
Yeah, I think there was definitely something. I reckon, it may well have been in my example, the user already had a Canvas app shared with them in that environment. So they could just navigate to it that way. There was just it, but certainly it did.
Either way, we'll figure it out, man. Because
while it's thinking about that, by the way.
Yeah.
Can you see now my crazy idea where I went, well, if I've got an entity that has enumerated every single Office 365 group, like I've got a CDS entity with the full details. If I went, oh, here's a crazy idea. If I made a team for every, a team in CDS for every single team, did that mapping, and then had each record in the entity owned by that team, it just, that's the self-managed thing. So I thought that would be a really crazy idea. But given that this is actually quite close to the money, you can see why that admin ID, you've got this Microsoft team, you have all your admin work done there, you add an owner.
It's freaking awesome. This, I love this. I think that this could really work. I mean, honestly, I think it might take a little while to sync. I really, really do. But also, this says they're a member. I want to check something, man. Oh no, it's ownership. Yeah, being stupid. There you go. So they're definitely under the ownership piece.
Yeah.
Let's give it a little while. I mean,
if you want to give it a little kick along, go back to your account and go to that environment as your account, and let's just make some dummy Canvas app and share it with them, just to sort of force the issue that way, because that has no bearing on CDS access, right? That's just literally will light it up.
Yeah. So let's go to.
And of course, if we're wrong publicly, but hey, it was fun to go and explore the stuff. But
the thing is, even if we're wrong, we found out how far we could take it.
Yeah. Definitely. I was pretty confident for my testing today, where I added someone, I added someone, I got them to access, I took it away, I got them to access, and I was able to see the change.
I think it'll work. I reckon it's probably just got a sync, man. It's just the file.
Yeah, that'll do.
Save as.
So you put this in the default environment. Is that now? That's
that's very naughty. No, I've been a bad boy.
Yeah, you want it in the other one.
Yeah, sorry, dude. I'm very naughty.
Here we go now. Yeah. That's right. All right, so let's go and make some app.
So let's just say Canvas. Everyone on the call, don't build in the defaults. Don't do what I just did. Man, even in the hackathon manuals I build, I'm like so hardcore about just build in the right place, and I do that myself.
That's right. A lot of our clients, the default environment's considered the playpen. It's kind of, and COE makes it easy because in COE, I just basically look and see if anything's been excessively shared or using lots of connections, and even that's hard because we have a strict DLP on the default one.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as being too hard to manage these days. All right, so let's go share that to our lucky user, whatever.
User 44. I just want to click in there. Do you want to share it to the user or no? Obviously the user.
Let's just do the user. Yeah.
Cool.
That. Yep. Whatever. That's cool.
Yeah.
And that has no bearing on CDS because we've not put it in the solution. We're not talking to anything. That's just simply there to light up the environment selected the quickest way, right?
Yes. So let's go back to that environment.
Yep. And let's hope that our other user now, if we do a bit of a refresh, can find and see that there. Will they see it from this level? Like, if you go this level here, because What do they see now? Even when you share an app, it takes a while. Hey, I've seen it take up to 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes.
There we go.
All right, so we've gone to team 10, and you've sort of gone in and just done stuff. Now, based on my testing today, if you were to now go and have a look in the Teams membership,
right, so let's get
for CDS.
Our apps, come on. Do I not have one open with this thing in?
You did. It was, yeah, hit that one again, and I cross my fingers, and hopefully it can prove me right.
Come on. Yes!
Hey. So now, okay, now do this. Go and delegate or relegate user 44 to a mere member in Teams. So go back to Teams in that tab beside that one. Take him out of owner and go, nah, sorry, buddy, you're back to a regular old member. We don't mind you talking, but you can't do cool stuff. If you were to refresh the Teams thing again, I don't think you have to access it again. I think that'll magically do it itself. I don't know, because I don't know the internals of how the jobs work behind the scenes to make this happen. But yeah, so jump back to your Teams tab, your CDS Teams tab, which is so it's come out of there. That's good.
So there we go. Now we're going to go back to the Teams tab in CDS, all right?
We can also, we also go back and just refresh the access to the environment, as if the user's tool gone in there again. We can test that in a bit, but.
Let's try it. Okay, so. All right, no, it's not a problem because it did take a couple of seconds last time. Right, so maybe what we do.
I don't recall asking my users to then go back and mess around in the environment. It was just I checked again at a certain point and they were gone. But it didn't take that long. Certainly when I did it today, it wasn't too bad. So we've still got our person, so they've gone and done something. So what do you reckon? Do you have any theory why a user has to access the environment for suddenly that association to happen behind the scenes? Do you kind of have any guesses to the mechanics of how this works?
There must be some rights or some. Oh, I could guess. There must be some sort of right action that happens to identify the fact that, like, the I'm here thing.
Because it's almost like user has accessed the environment and somehow it's gone. Because again, it's almost like it's reverse logic, isn't it? Right? Yeah. It's like user is a member. It hasn't done the many-to-many relationship, between the Teams entity and the user entity, the association at that point. Because only when they're in that list there does it light up.
It's really
but weird. Anyway, now rest assured, they will go away.
We're going to hypothesize, but I think actually that's been a really, really good test.
So my next, so I was kind of, maybe the product team might be able to give some advice, but certainly I reckon what will happen now is a lot of organizations that are very Active Directory centric, you may actually find a lot of people will start creating groups in a similar, or teams in a similar way to what we've done, so they can have more enterprise or centralized control over like group membership. And this happens in SharePoint too, by the way. So SharePoint has a concept of SharePoint groups, which can be secured against lists and libraries and records, but you can also put Active Directory groups inside SharePoint groups, or just apply an Active Directory group direct onto SharePoint. And so a lot of organizations end up, particularly with intranets and enterprise portals, they'll use Active Directory groups as their authoritative membership source. Active Directory security groups, I should say.
I think it's a really good way to do it. I think it's the right way. Oh man!
So that was why. So I said to one of your Microsoft colleagues today, as I said, I've got a client with 5,500 teams. So I jokingly said, "How do you feel about 5,500 CDS teams in the Teams entity, all synchronized back to the equivalent 365 group?" And I guess that's Oakdale in a nutshell, right?
That's literally what it's doing.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think we've actually covered off something really, really important here. I've got to jump on another call, like very stat.
No worries. You had now. Do we have time to quickly talk about? You had a COE question or anything like that? We've sort of covered of the three things. We've done two.
I'd rather cover that off in another session. The reason is because it's not a small question. It's quite it's quite in depth. And actually, I want your opinion on a couple of things.
All right.
And not just the tech, but also the adoption piece.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, let's talk about that next time. And otherwise, if when eventually you do a refresh and this has disappeared, I might tack on a screenshot on the end to go, see, we weren't lying. Something like that.
I'm going to send you a tweet. No one will know why we're tweeting a random user, but it'll happen.
All right, cool.
Oh, man, it's been good to chat. Thanks so much for sharing. That's been really good.
No worries. Thanks very much. Good chatting, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, dude, absolutely, man.
Okay. All right.
See you later.
See you, mate.